I know you're not afraid of a little bit of dark. Because you are the dark.
At the beginning of the movie, a car pulls up outside a house. A girl notices it from her bedroom window and steps outside to investigate. She tries to examine the car but finds no one sitting inside. And before she can make out anything, someone calls her name from behind. She goes around the back of the house to see who it is, but finds no one there. Suddenly, a man appears and says, "There she is, the almost birthday girl. Looks like I've got my long legs on today. But what happens if I..." And the scene abruptly cuts off here. The scene shifts to an FBI department meeting where the boss briefs the team on a case involving the pursuit of a serial killer. And here we are introduced to a young, new FBI agent named Lee Harker. Lee and her assigned partner, Agent Fisk, head to a neighborhood to investigate, where Fisk instructs Lee to stay back while he goes door to door asking about the suspect. After he leaves, Lee steps out, sensing something unusual, and her attention is drawn to a particular house. When Fisk returns, she tells him the suspect is in house number 3525. She suggests they should call it in, but he dismisses the idea, saying they won't rely on a hunch on their first day in the field. He then advises her to relax and says he'll go check it out himself. Fisk approaches the house and knocks on the door, but as soon as it opens, he's shot in the head, killing him instantly. Terrified, Lee enters the house to investigate and finds a man in one of the rooms, who quietly surrenders without resistance. Next, we see Lee in an interrogation room, where she is asked to say the first word that comes to mind for each image shown to her. Afterward, a number between 0 and 100 is generated, and she is asked to state the number that comes to her mind. We then see Lee with Agent Carter and Agent Browning, and Carter remarks that she beat the number generator 8 times, and asks how she did it. Lee responds that she also missed it 8 times, to which Carter says half psychic is better than not psychic at all. He then tells her that a family of 4, the Horns, had lived in that house for 12 years, but 2 months ago, they were all murdered inside. Browning adds, 4 victims, but technically 3 murders and a suicide. The father stabbed his wife 61 times before the blade snapped off the handle. Carter explains that a letter was found with the bodies, written in a coded alphabet, not in the handwriting of anyone connected to the family. They have 10 letters like it, all written by the same hand. 10 houses, 10 families, over the past 30 years, all signed with one word, Longlegs. Someone or something is making the fathers do it, and so far, they've been damned trying to figure out what or who. Browning tells Carter that Lee isn't ready for this, to which Carter replies, if she has a better idea, she is welcome to run with it. Carter then brings Lee to his office and asks her for her version of what happened in Colfax with the shooting of Agent Fisk. She explains that it's like something tapping her on the shoulder, guiding her where to look. He asks if anything like that has ever happened to her before, and she replies that it does, from time to time. Carter then asks her to tell him what she sees, to which she asks what the families have in common. He explains that all the victim families had daughters with birthdays on the 14th of any given month, but only the Horns were murdered on that date. Lee begins her investigation and becomes so engrossed in the details that she eventually falls asleep at the scene. Later that night, Carter takes her out for a drink and asks her about her progress. She explains that there were no signs of forced entry, and forensics found no evidence that the suspect was ever in the house. The only things left behind were the bodies of the victims, all killed with objects from inside the house. Twice, it was a shotgun, both times legally registered to the father. 8 times, it was a knife from the family's kitchen, and once it was a hammer from the family's toolbox. She points out that Longlegs would have had to be inside the house to use the shotgun, the knife, or the hammer, but according to the physical evidence, he never was. If it weren't for the letters he left behind, it would almost seem like he was never there at all, Carter remarks. So, he murders them, but not in person? to which Lee suggests maybe he tells the families what he wants them to do to themselves, to each other, and then they do it. Carter comments that it sounds like something out of Manson's playbook. Lee responds that Manson had accomplices, prompting Carter to ask if she thinks Longlegs has help. Now, because Carter is drunk, Lee drives him home, and he brings her over to his house to introduce her to his wife Anna and daughter Ruby. Ruby takes Lee to her room and asks if she always wanted to be an FBI agent when she was a little girl. Lee admits that she wanted to be an actress, to which Ruby responds, "That messes up kids." Ruby then asks, "Is it scary being a lady FBI agent?" To which Lee replies that it is. Just then, Anna interrupts, saying she's sure Lee has a lot of very important work to do. Ruby asks if Lee can come to her birthday party. Why don't she ask her herself? And Lee says she will be there. Later that night, Lee calls her mom to check in on her, and during the conversation, we learn that Lee's birthday is coming up. Suddenly, she hears some noises from outside the house and quickly tells her mom that she needs to go and will call her back. As she hangs up, there's a loud knock on the door. Lee moves toward the door, but after getting no response, decides not to open it. She then turns on the outside lights and sees a silhouette in the distance. Lee grabs her gun and steps outside to confront the person, but no one is there. However, when she turns around, she sees someone inside her house. Lee rushes back inside, only to find a letter left behind. And on the letter, it reads, "Do not open until January 14." Lee opens the envelope and finds a birthday card from Longlegs with a message written in coded alphabets. As she decodes the message, she discovers that the murderer has threatened to kill her mother. She then receives a call from the department saying Carter is looking for her. The next morning, Lee arrives at a victim's house, where Carter informs her that it's the same murderer again. He adds that it looks like the family was planning a trip and a friend assumed they were away, so no one checked in on them. Lee asks if the girl's birthday was on the 14th, to which Carter confirms it seems so. He notices Lee decoding the message and asks how she figured it out, to which she simply replies that she just looked long enough. They then head to the bedroom, where they're informed that the father was found in the garage with a kitchen knife in his hand and his wrists and throat slit. The wounds appear to be self-inflicted, but they'll confirm once they conduct further checks. Lee asks how long ago this happened, and the agent responds that it was about a month. Carter then asks to see the deceased bodies, and Lee inquires about the girl's age, to which the agent replies that she was 9 or 10. Later, Lee calls her mother to let her know that she'll be busy at work and probably won't be able to make it. Her mother asks if she'll see her on her birthday next week, and Lee says she will try. Her mother then asks if she's still saying her prayers, saying it protects them from the devil, to which Lee says she knows and ends the call, promising to call her later. Lee continues her investigation and discovers a similar case from the 1970s, linked to a satanic cult. She finds that a victim named Andre, who was 13 years old, was killed on November 16. As she starts to analyze the death dates of all the victims, she hears some noise and senses someone's presence, but decides to ignore it. She opens a book titled 9 Circles of Hell, and while connecting the dates with lines, she forms a triangle. The next day, Lee tells Carter that it's an algorithm. She explains that the first murder occurred on July 14, 1966, and the subsequent murders happened within 6 days of the daughter's birthdays, either before or after, forming an inverted triangle. Carter asks what he's supposed to do with this information, to which Lee reveals that she has also decoded all the letters, noting that one recurring reference is to the fine time we had at the Camera family farm, where X's mark the spot. Carter mentions that he was at Georgetown during that time, and Lee adds that the local priest's visit went awry due to Carrie Ann's father and an axe from the tool shed. He killed the priest, his wife, and then himself, while Carrie Ann, who was at school, survived. Lee points out the date of March 8 and then shows Carter that Ann's birthday, March 14, is exactly 6 days apart. She suggests that Longlegs was at the Camera family farm and that Carrie Ann might have seen him. Carter asks about the 13th, and Lee admits she's still unsure, but notes that it's only 3 days away, so Longlegs might kill again. Carter inquires if Carrie Ann is still alive, and Lee confirms she is at the Water Rock Psychiatric Hospital. At first, they decide to visit the Camera family farm, where following the X marks, they reach a place where they find a crucifix nailed on the floor. Carter pulls off some wooden planks from the area, and underneath, they find a piece of paper with a triangle drawn on it. They dig in further and find a life-size doll, and when Carter picks it up to check on it, its eyes suddenly open. They bring the doll with them, and a doctor examines it, noting that it's handmade. Porcelain head, hands and feet, unbleached canvas body, cotton stuffing, and the hair is human. What's left of it? He mentions finding a metal ball inside the doll's head, which he refers to as its brain. As he makes them listen to the ball's sound, Lee suddenly has a vision of a snake, followed by an image of a doll, and Longlegs tells her that he knows that she's now not afraid of the dark, because she is the dark. He then covers her with a black cloth, and Lee is snapped out of her vision when the doctor mentions that the previous night, the doll was whispering his ex-wife's name over and over, but he dismisses it, attributing it to late nights at work. Carter asks if the brain can be opened up, to which the doctor replies that it can, but there's nothing inside. Next, we see Longlegs visiting a hardware store to buy some items, and when the cashier asks if she can help him with anything else, he places her hands over his eyes and says, "Cuckoo!" The girl responds that she doesn't know what that is supposed to be. He then asks her, what day is her birthday? To which the girl calls for her dad, saying, that gross guy is back again. Now, on his way back, we see Longlegs screaming,
Daddy! Mommy! Unmake me! And save me from the hell of living!
Carter and Lee visit the psychiatric hospital, where the doctor tells them that Carrie Ann is catatonic. Then yesterday, she got a visitor, and he had never seen that happen. Like someone flipped a switch on the back of her head, and all of a sudden, she was wide awake. Carter asks if he saw the visitor, to which he says he wasn't on site at the time, but the log should say. Lee finds her name on the register and asks, does the guard check IDs? To which he says they do not require that. Lee then talks to Anne, who tells her that she has seen her before. Lee responds that she doesn't think so, but Anne insists, saying she's been to her house or has seen someone who looks a lot like her. Lee then asks Anne how she's feeling today, and Anne describes it as different, like being in a long, dark dream, a limo. Lee then asks if she remembers anything before the long dream, like coming to the hospital or her parents. Anne says, they didn't know what to do with themselves, and she knew she was a handful as it was. Mom always hated her because of how she came out wrong when she was born. Dad was a good man, and that's something she remembers clearly, and that's why he did what he did. Lee tells Anne that she had a visitor yesterday, and asks if she can describe him, to which Anne says she doesn't ever want to forget him, and she was just waiting for him to come and tell her something to do for him, or even better, to do something for the man down the stairs. She'd do anything he says, anything at all. If he told her to jump out a window, she'd do it without a second thought. Or if he told her to kill her right here in this room with her bare hand, she'd surely do. Lee asks Anne if she remembers having a special doll that looked just like her, to which Anne replies, no, then adds, and you don't remember either. Later, Lee tells Carter that Anne came out of her catatonia on the same day they found the doll. Carter dismisses it as a coincidence, adding that they opened the ball in the doll's head and found nothing inside. Lee suggests that they might be missing something that makes it work, mentioning that in some cultures, dolls are used in magic to control people. Carter skeptically asks, so he kills them with a doll from somewhere else by remote control? He says, Longlegs is just a man, not a witch doctor. He then asks her how Longlegs knows her name, to which Lee says she doesn't know. Carter continues, saying that just last week, the investigation was ice cold, but now that she's on it, things are moving quickly. He tells her that he revisited her file and asks when she last spoke to her mother, to which Lee asks what that has to do with the case. Carter reveals that her mother filed a police report on January 13, 1974, the day before Lee's 9th birthday, which is on the 14th, and reported seeing a tall, pale trespasser. Carter asks if she remembers anyone like that being at her house. Lee says she doesn't know, to which Carter urges her to visit her mother and find out what she remembers about the person who came to their house when she was a child. Lee visits her mother, Ruth, who asks if she still says her prayers, to which Lee admits she never did because they scared her. Ruth begins to laugh, and when Lee asks what's so funny, Ruth replies that she is right, as none of their prayers helped them. Lee prepares something for her mother to eat when a noise catches her attention. She moves to investigate and sees an insect emerging from behind a closed door, triggering a vision of a snake. This is followed by a flashback to her childhood, where her mother tells her that she got Deborah to cover her shift tomorrow because it's someone's birthday. Lee moves towards the door, and we see her mother in the bathroom, washing something. Hearing a noise, her mother comes out to check and quickly tries to make a call, only to find the phone isn't working. She swiftly grabs her gun, and the scene then shifts back to Lee and Ruth, with Ruth saying she can't believe it's almost her birthday again. She reminisces about that day, mentioning how she bled and bled, but Lee interrupts, asking if she remembers her 9th birthday. Ruth replies that she doesn't remember anything and asks, "Do you?" Lee presses further, asking what happened that day, mentioning that she called the police about a trespasser. Ruth insists that no one ever came to visit them and says those are things a little girl shouldn't know. Lee responds that she isn't a child anymore, to which Ruth replies that she's not a child because she was allowed to grow up. She adds, "This is a cruel world, especially for the little ones, as not all of them get to live." Lee asks what she means by that, to which Ruth explains that she might have forgotten everything she could for both their sakes, but she never threw anything away, and all of Lee's things are still in her room. Lee goes to her room and finds a box of old photos, triggering visions that frighten her. She suddenly recalls her childhood encounter with Longlegs, the moment when she took his photo. Ruth then comes there, asking who he is and why he is talking to her child. But instead of answering, he starts singing a song. Lee then returns to Carter and shows him the photo of Longlegs, explaining that it's him, and she found it in a box of photos at her house. We then see Longlegs at a bus stop, where the police arrive, and he surrenders without resistance. Next, they see Longlegs' interrogation tape, where he reveals his name as Dale Ferdinand Cobble, and when asked if he ever calls himself Longlegs, he responds by asking when he will see Lee Harker. The officer then asks how he knows Lee, to which he replies, "A friend of a friend of a friend wants him to say, 'Happy birthday, Lee Harker.' He wants them all to know that he'll be there, and you all will be there." He then begins singing Happy Birthday for Lee, prompting Browning to turn off the tape, saying, "And he goes on like that for a while." Lee asks, "For how long?" To which Browning replies, 24 minutes. Carter then instructs everyone to leave the room, and Browning informs him that Longlegs' luggage was filled with notebooks containing handwriting that matches the letters found at the crime scenes, and all of it is heavily satanic. She tells Lee that while the Bureau appreciates her contribution, it has put them in an awkward position. So far, there's no physical evidence that Cobble has ever killed anyone, although he clearly worships the devil. But in the United States, he's allowed to do that. She expresses concern about the fact that he knows Lee, but he can't do anything else about that now that they have him. Lee responds, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, with 7 heads and 10 horns. And on his horns he wore 10 crowns, and on each head was written a blasphemous name." Browning recognizes it as a quote from the Book of Revelation, and Lee corrects her, saying it's Revelation, not plural. She then points out that Longlegs isn't acting alone. He must have an accomplice, someone whom the families trusted enough to let into their homes, perhaps a child, or someone who could pass as one. Carter argues that they've caught the person who wrote the letters, and if they handle this right, he will spend the rest of his life in jail. Lee counters, saying it's not over yet because the triangle isn't complete, as they are still missing the 13th. Browning notes that the 13th is today and asks what they're supposed to do about it. Lee suggests they can expect his accomplice to kill at least one more family, and Cobble is the only one who knows who that is. Lee asks, "Where is he now?" To which Browning says he is downstairs, right under her feet. Lee recalls Longlegs telling Ruth that he is a friend of a friend who lives downstairs. And when Ruth asks, "Downstairs from where?" he replies, "Everywhere," and adds that she can even call him Mr. Downstairs. Lee then goes to interrogate Longlegs, and as she enters, he greets her with, "There she is, the almost birthday girl." Lee takes a seat in front of him, and he comments that it's funny, He recalls that when she decided to go into law enforcement at age 20, they had a big laugh about it. Though only he laughed, not she. Lee asks, "Who is she?" To which Longlegs replies, "The seventh she." He explains that it's about being given the same choice they've all faced: accept the gift and destroy it. And destroy yourself or keep it. Bow down and get right into the dirty work. Work that gets dirty as it cleans, like a mop. Lee asks him if he doesn't work alone and if someone else has been helping him, to which Longlegs responds with a cryptic knock knock and describes a scenario: a nice lady with a Bible and a congratulatory message at the farmhouse door, informing them that they have been selected to collect their gift from the church. He adds that it's all according to orders from the man downstairs. He mentions that the farmhouse will be so bright and white that it can't be missed. Lee asks if he's referring to Carrie Ann Camera and asks what he said to her at the mental institution. Longlegs replies that Carrie Ann's house was even whiter when he visited. Lee asks about January 13th, 1974, to which Longlegs confirms that Lee's house, house number 8, was exceptionally white, and he knew the work they were doing was immaculate. Lee asserts that his work is over, and he will spend the rest of his life in prison, to which Longlegs agrees, but adds that he won't only be in prison. He'll be a little bit of everywhere, waiting in the Father's wings. Lee asks who has been helping him, but Longlegs tells her to get started on her own. When she asks who the man downstairs is, Longlegs responds, "Why don't you ask your mommy?" Lee insists that her mother doesn't know anything, and Longlegs replies with "Hail Satan," before violently banging his head on the table, scaring Lee and ultimately killing himself. Later, Carter tells Lee that it's enough. He says they had the guy and now they've got nothing. They let all those families die, and nothing about that is better or okay. But it's done. Regarding the 13th, Carter informs her that while she was in the interrogation room, Carrie Ann Camera jumped off the roof at Water Rock. He says Longlegs must have told her to do that when he saw her, just as he somehow influenced all the others to do what he wanted. Carter reassures her that Longlegs acted alone, with no accomplices, no black magic, no voodoo, nothing. Browning drives Lee to her mother's house and asks how she wants to handle the situation. Lee replies that she should go in alone and tell her mother they need to bring her in for questioning. She'll explain that they believe she could help them identify the accomplice. As Lee enters her house to see her mother, outside, Ruth shoots Browning. Hearing the shot, Lee looks out the window and sees her mother shoot Browning again. In shock, Lee rushes outside to confront her mother, demanding that she put the gun down. Noticing a doll nearby, Lee asks her mother what it is, to which Ruth replies, "You caught him, and now he is free." Lee insists that Cobble is dead and that it's over. But Ruth responds, "And you are free too." Before shooting the doll, smoke comes out from Lee's head as she falls to the ground, and she watches smoke comes out of the doll's head before she faints. In a flashback, Ruth tells Lee a story about how she and her daughter were always alone, with no one ever visiting them. Then, one day, a doll maker came to their home. He began his work, his terrible magic, the work of the devil, leaving a piece of himself in every doll. The doll made the little girl forget, guiding her on what to look at and what to ignore. The devil wanted the little girl for himself, but her mother could never allow that to happen, so she begged for her daughter's life to be spared. And in exchange, she agreed to help him. She had once been a nurse, but now her work involved murdering families. It went like this: knock knock on the farmhouse door, a nice lady with a Bible and a congratulations. You have won a gift from the church. All she had to do was get the doll inside, and from his hiding place within the dolls, the devil would take care of the rest. Her only job was to watch and ensure everything happened as he wanted. And that was the deal she made. Lee wakes up and finds herself in the basement. She comes upstairs hearing a phone ringing, and when she answers the phone, the devil tells her that she is late for Miss Ruby's birthday party. Panicking, Lee rushes to Carter's house, where Carter and his wife greet her warmly. Lee asks if everything is okay, and Carter assures her everything is great, adding that she arrived just in time because Miss Ruby has just started opening her presents. As Lee enters, she sees her mother there, and Ruby playing with a doll, which shocks her. She urgently tells Carter that her mother is the accomplice, but Carter asks her to sit down. Lee insists that he needs to listen to her, but Anna suggests it might be a good time to bring out the cake, to which Carter agrees and says he will find something to cut it with. Ruth tells Lee that the woman is already dead and the little girl will be next. Carter asks Anna to join him in the kitchen, and when she tells the others she'll be right back, Carter cryptically replies that he will be right back, but she will still be in the kitchen. After they leave, Ruth tells Lee that all three of them must die. Lee asks her why she is doing this, to which Ruth replies that if they don't die, we will burn and twist in hell forever. She insists she is doing this for her, just as she always has, so that the little girl named Lee would be allowed to grow up, making it right. She declares she will keep doing it until Lee stands upon the sand of the sea and sees a beast rise up out of the sea. Lee quickly pulls Ruby away from the doll, and when Carter comes out, intent on killing Ruby, Lee shoots him, killing him instantly. Ruth, filled with rage, orders Lee to move away from the girl, and as she lunges at Ruby to kill her, Lee fires again, shooting her mother and killing her. Lee pulls Ruby away from the doll again and aims her gun to destroy it, only to find she is out of bullets. The scene cuts to Longlegs, singing the happy birthday song for Lee with increasing intensity. As he reaches the end, he chants "Hail Satan," and the screen fades to black, ending the movie. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a scare. Until next time, stay spooky.